Hi, my name is Shelly Chen, and I'm a second-generation Burmese Chinese American. I identify as queer, both in terms of my gender and sexuality. So I am the voter engagement coordinator at Advancing Justice LA, and I also volunteer with API Quality LA as a steering committee member. And I first got involved with API Quality LA a little bit after my senior year of college. I always jokingly call it my quarter-life crisis, but it sort of was in a lot of ways. I think during my senior year, I was just going through a lot personally, and was doing a lot of reevaluating of who I was and what I wanted to do with my life post-grad. I had been in a relationship for the first 3 years of college that was for the most part really closeted, and that had ended right before my senior year, which I think was what prompted all of this. And so it was a really difficult time in my life, but I think also a period of a lot of growth for me. And so what came out of that was I decided that I wanted to be more involved in API and queer spaces, and wanted to do more work to advocate for these communities. And so that's what led me to seek out API Quality LA. And I remember the first event I went to was a coming out workshop, and it was just really significant for me in a lot of ways. It was the first time I'd been in a space that was affirming of both these parts of my identity, being API and queer. My experiences in the past had not been as welcoming. For example, a lot of the queer spaces at my college were, very white, not culturally sensitive. Some of the API spaces I had been in weren't necessarily queer friendly. And so, I see finding API Quality LA as really a turning point, and it introduced me to this beautiful community that I'm a part of today, and also the world of organizing and activism, and it's what led me to my current job at Advancing Justice. So I think I first knew I was queer when I was in high school, but I definitely didn't talk to anyone about it, was not out at all. And I think I spent a lot of time on the internet. This was before the days of Tumblr, so I think, there wasn't as much of a community, but, there was at least something. But for the most part, it felt really isolating. I think the interesting thing about my high school experience is that a lot of my friends from high school ended up being queer, and are out now, but at the time we never talked about it, which I think speaks to kind of how isolating it can be growing up in the San Gabriel Valley and being queer. So when I was in high school, I was not out at all, and I think before going to college, I had a lot of expectations, just hoping to be able to be more out and open about who I was. But shortly after I started college, I got into a relationship that lasted nearly my first 3 years of college. And for the most part, it was pretty closeted. I think we were both not at a place where we felt comfortable being out and open. And I think it was kind of one of those things where it was like, this is great, I want people to know about it, but I also don't want to be out because that's scary. And so most of the relationship was spent in the closet. And I think that was difficult for a lot of reasons. I think when you're in a relationship, even if one person wants to come out, that means implications for the other person. And so I think that's just kind of a difficult thing to navigate. So in 2008, when Prop 8 was on the ballot, I just remember there being a lot of anti-LGBT sentiment in the San Gabriel Valley. I live in Temple City and was living with my parents at the time, and I just remember driving around and seeing so many of those yellow yes on Prop 8 signs everywhere. There were literally like maybe 10 per block, and I rarely saw a no on Prop 8 sign, which I think is just kind of indicative of, I guess, where the community was at the time. And I know that in 2004, there was a really huge anti-gay marriage rally in Alhambra that was organized by Chinese American churches in the SGV. And I think that was just a really difficult environment to be around and to grow up in. But I think we've come a long way. Just recently, this past July, we heard about another rally that was planned protesting the Supreme Court's marriage equality decision. And so some organizations, API Equality LA, along with Advancing Justice LA, organized a counter rally, and we're able to turn out over 100 people. We had about 2 days notice, and I think it's really great how many people we were able to get to show up for this cause in support of LGBT rights, and just kind of shows how much progress we've made in the last 7 or so years. And so that was just really beautiful to see these people coming together in my hometown. You know, that hasn't always felt welcoming for queer folks to be in. So one hope I have for the SGV is I was really inspired by the rally we had a few months ago against the anti-gay marriage protesters. I think it was just really inspiring to see so many people come together for this cause. And it's the first time I had ever seen any event like that in the San Gabriel Valley. So just as someone who grew up here, that was really meaningful for me. And in the future, I would love to see more of those events and more spaces of support and community for queer API folks. And I think what that rally showed is that the support is here, and that there are people who are interested and willing to come out. And so I'm looking forward to cultivating more of those spaces and building that community here in the SGV. So my relationship with my family has never been as great as I'd like it to be. I think we get along really well, and we spend time together, and we have ways of showing affection for each other. But I think one of the biggest barriers is language. So my parents grew up in Burma, and they speak Burmese and Chinese and a little bit of English. And I only speak a little Burmese and mostly English. And so communication has always been really difficult. Even before I came out, I think it was kind of hard to have more in-depth conversations with my parents. So growing up, I had heard family members refer to gay people or lesbians using words in Burmese, but I think even to this day, I'm not really sure if those words are the actual words or if they're derogatory, or that's just kind of the context I've always heard them in. And I think that's something I really struggled with, is not having a word for myself in my parents' native language. So when I came out to them, it was mostly in English. I think I just said I'm gay, and even that was really hard for me to say. I didn't even try to explain queer to them, but and I think my parents understand English enough to know what that meant, but they responded in Burmese, and it was just kind of like this weird back and forth of like their Burmese and broken English and my English and broken Burmese. And I think there was a lot of confusion, and I guess my parents were really caught off guard. I think I had thought they already knew, and so I was kind of surprised that they didn't. So they were just really shocked. I think they were kind of disappointed. It was very emotional, and I think just all of these things added together, but with the language barrier on top of it, just made things really difficult. And so that happened. This was, I think, 2 weeks before I had graduated college, and so I was still living on campus at the time, and I remember I just drove back to school, and we didn't really talk about it. I think a few days after my graduation, my mom had said she wished I had waited until after to tell them, which I think it was really hurtful for me, because basically I felt like what she was saying was that my coming out had kind of erased the past 4 years of work I had done in college, and like the coming out had overshadowed the graduation, which was supposed to be a really happy day for them, but was one that they couldn't enjoy. And so that was really difficult for me. I think we've had a few conversations since then, and I think there's been some progress, but it's still kind of the elephant in the room, so we don't really talk about it. So my relationship now with my parents is still not where I'd like it to be. They're still struggling to accept it, I think, but they try to find ways to be supportive. So, for example, my mom came with me to an API equality meeting a few years ago, which is really great. I was really surprised that she even came, but she knew I'd been doing a lot of work with them and was interested in seeing what kind of work I was doing and meeting all the new friends I had made. And I think it was a really positive experience for her. I think she actually left feeling a little more reassured about my being queer. So I think one message that has been pushed a lot by the mainstream LGBT community is the whole message of it gets better, which I think is fine in some instances, but I think also sometimes we can't afford to wait for it to get better. And so I guess my advice would be, if you're struggling or needing support, I would encourage folks to go out and get involved. And also, to practice self-care and do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. But one thing that really helped me when I was struggling was finding API Equality LA and getting involved in the community and, meeting really awesome folks and surrounding myself with that kind of support and being in really nurturing and healthy environments. And there are a lot of them out here in LA and, hopefully soon in the SGV. And so I would encourage folks to seek each other out, seek out community and organizations that you can get involved with.